The story begins in the year 1950, inside a car factory where several vehicles were being assembled, but among them, there was one special red car on which a mechanic was working. While the mechanic was checking its engine, the hood of the car suddenly closed on its own, severely injuring his hand. The mechanic was immediately rushed to the doctor. Shortly after, another mechanic came to inspect the car, and as he was inside, the ash from his cigar fell onto the seat. Hours passed, and the factory's workday ended, with everyone heading home. However, as the supervisor was leaving, he noticed that the headlights of the red car were still on. When he opened the car to check, the body of the mechanic with the cigar fell out from inside. Fast forward 28 years, we are introduced to Dennis, a student who arrives in his car at the house of Arnie, another boy who is shy, studious, and completely different from Dennis, yet the two soon became close friends. It was their first day of school, and upon reaching, they retrieved new books from their lockers. As they walked, they noticed a new girl named Lee, whose beauty had captivated every boy in the school. Later that day, as Dennis and Arnie were heading home, Arnie suddenly spotted a car parked outside a house and asked Dennis to stop immediately. Upon approaching, they discovered it was a red classic car, the same one from the factory at the start of the story, although now it was in terrible condition, almost a wreck. Despite its state, Arnie fell in love with the car at first sight. The car's owner, George, came out and told them that the car's name was Christine and that it belonged to his brother, who had recently passed away. George, eager to get rid of the car, offered to sell it to Arnie for just $50. Dennis advised Arnie against wasting money on such a wrecked car and suggested getting a better one, but Arnie, without a second thought, bought the car on the spot. That evening, when Arnie returned home and told his parents about the purchase, his mother scolded him severely, insisting the car could not stay at their house. Unfazed, Arnie took the car to a garage with Dennis, where they met the grumpy owner, Will, who reluctantly allowed Arnie to keep the car there. On the way back, Dennis asked Arnie why he bought such a terrible car. Arnie responded that he didn't choose the car. Christine chose him. The next day, during lunch, Dennis waited for Arnie, but when he didn't show up, Dennis went looking for him. He found Arnie being bullied by a troublemaker named Buddy, who was harassing him. When Dennis intervened, Buddy threw Arnie's lunch on the ground and forced him to fall into it, breaking Arnie's glasses in the process. Buddy laughed at Arnie's predicament, but Dennis seized the moment and attacked Buddy. However, Buddy's gang surrounded Dennis. Fortunately, a teacher arrived, stopping the fight. Arnie explained that Buddy had threatened him with a knife, prompting the teacher to search Buddy's pocket, where the knife was found. As a result, Buddy and his gang were sent to the office, and Buddy was expelled from the school. Weeks passed, and Arnie became deeply engrossed in repairing Christine, working tirelessly day and night. Eventually, the garage owner offered Arnie a job, allowing him to earn some parts for the car in exchange. Arnie agreed and devoted himself entirely to restoring Christine, unknowingly growing excessively attached to the car. One evening, Dennis visited Arnie after not seeing him for days and noticed that Arnie had completely changed. He no longer wore glasses, dressed stylishly, and carried himself with an air of arrogance. Arnie barely spoke to Dennis before returning to work at the garage. When Dennis spoke to Arnie's mother, she expressed her concern about Arnie and the car, revealing that she had learned the car's previous owner had suffocated to death inside it. Alarmed, Dennis visited George, who recounted the history of his brother, explaining how his brother became obsessed with Christine after buying it, to the extent that his wife and daughter lost their lives in the car, and eventually, his brother met the same fate. Determined to investigate, Dennis visited the garage at night and tried to open Christine, but as soon as he touched the handle, the radio turned on by itself, scaring Dennis enough to make him run away. The next morning, during a school football match, Dennis saw Arnie arrive in Christine, now completely restored and in pristine condition. The sight amazed everyone, including Buddy and his gang. Lee, who was with Arnie, kissed him in front of everyone, leaving Dennis feeling upset and distracted during the match. This lapse allowed an opponent to shove Dennis, causing him to fall hard and sustain severe injuries that left him unconscious. When Dennis woke up days later, he found himself in the hospital with his leg and neck in a cast. Arnie visited him, but Dennis noticed how drastically his friend had changed. Arnie, once a timid boy who listened to his parents, now appeared confident and defiant. After a brief visit, Arnie left to take Lee to a movie. Later, while they were in Christine, things escalated, and Lee suddenly got out of the car, accusing Arnie of loving the car more than her. Although Arnie managed to calm her down and get her back in the car, the windshield mysteriously malfunctioned. While Arnie stepped out to check, Christine locked itself from the inside. Lee, left alone in the car, began to choke, as if the car itself was attacking her. A bystander eventually managed to pull her out, saving her life. However, Lee was convinced that Christine was jealous of her and had tried to kill her. That night, Arnie returned to the garage, only to find Buddy and his gang destroying Christine with weapons, reducing the car to a wreck. When Arnie discovered the damage the next day, he was devastated. But what happened next proved Christine was no ordinary car. Lee asked in shock who could have done this, but Arnie, suddenly and inexplicably, shouted at her and told her to leave. Later, Arnie informed his parents about the incident, and while they tried to calm him down by offering to buy him a new car, this only made Arnie angrier because he knew, just like Lee, his parents hated Christine. Furthermore, he blamed them for Christine's condition, reasoning that if they had allowed him to keep the car at home, none of this would have happened. Enraged, Arnie insulted his parents even more as he stormed off to his room, but his father grabbed him from behind, demanding he apologize to his mother. Arnie, however, continued to lash out, forcing his father to slap him, to which Arnie retaliated, hitting his father back before quietly leaving the house. Arnie went straight to Christine and decided once and for all to fix her, piece by piece. However, what he saw next left him utterly stunned. He watched in disbelief as the car seemingly repaired itself as if by magic. Overjoyed, Arnie spoke to Christine, asking what else she was capable of. In mere moments, Christine fully restored herself to her former pristine state. Later that night, we see Moochie, one of Buddy's gang members, stopping a truck in the middle of the road to rob it. Suddenly, he heard the sound of a car engine in the distance. As he moved closer, he realized it was Christine, completely restored and now gleaming like new. Assuming Arnie was inside, Moochie immediately understood that Arnie had figured out he and Buddy were responsible for destroying Christine. Panicked, Moochie began apologizing profusely, but Christine's headlights turned on, and she lunged toward him at high speed. Moochie ran for his life, seeking refuge in a nearby alley, thinking the car would give up the chase. However, Christine pursued him relentlessly. Moochie eventually ran into an old warehouse, hoping to evade the car, but Christine followed him inside. Cornered and with no escape route, Moochie brandished a knife and threatened Arnie, believing he was inside the car. But Christine, without a driver, forced her way into the narrow space and ruthlessly crushed Moochie to death. The next morning, Arnie visited Dennis and told him about Moochie's death, which left Dennis completely shocked. He couldn't fathom how Christine, completely wrecked just a day earlier, had managed to restore herself. When Dennis questioned him, Arnie offered no answers and left silently. Shortly after, Detective Junkins visited Arnie, informing him that he was investigating both the attack on Christine and Moochie's murder. Arnie feigned ignorance about the killing but expressed satisfaction at hearing of Moochie's death, which deepened the detective's suspicions. Junkins mentioned that Lee had testified about Christine's mysterious self-repairing abilities, but Arnie dismissed the conversation and left. Later, Arnie called Lee to meet him, but she refused, which only fueled his anger. Meanwhile, Buddy and his friend Don were driving with alcohol in their car when another vehicle began following them. Buddy stopped the car to see who it was, but the blinding headlights made it impossible to identify the driver. When Buddy reversed his car, the mysterious vehicle did the same, and it was then revealed to be none other than Christine. Furious, Buddy sped off and stopped at a gas station where his friend Richie worked. Grabbing an iron rod, Buddy prepared to confront the driver of the pursuing car. However, Christine arrived at full speed and rammed into Buddy's car, causing significant damage. Thinking Arnie was inside, Buddy demanded he step out, but Christine smashed into Buddy's car again, this time shoving it into the workshop. Don, still inside the car, was crushed along with it. Gasoline began leaking from Buddy's car, and soon, it caught fire, leading to a massive explosion that engulfed the entire garage. Richie was also caught in the flames and perished. Buddy managed to escape, but Christine, now ablaze, resumed her pursuit and ultimately ran him over, leaving his charred body behind. Later, garage owner Will heard the sound of a car arriving and was shocked to see Christine, still smoldering. Surprised, as Arnie had gone to repair another vehicle, Will grabbed his gun and approached the car to investigate. Using a cloth to protect himself from the heat, he opened the door, only to find the car empty. Perplexed, he climbed into Christine, but this proved to be a fatal mistake. The car locked itself from the inside and crushed Will against the dashboard, killing him mercilessly. The following morning, Arnie arrived at the garage to find multiple police cars parked outside. Detective Junkins informed him that Will's body had been found inside Christine. Arnie pretended to know nothing about the incident, But deep down, he was certain Christine was responsible. She stood there, once again polished and gleaming, as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, Dennis returned home from the hospital and received a call from Lee, who expressed her concern that Christine had completely taken over Arnie's mind, making him behave erratically and dangerously. Dennis reassured her that Arnie would never willingly harm anyone, but he acknowledged that Christine might be controlling him. They agreed that the car needed to be destroyed once and for all. That evening, Dennis and Lee met at the garage, waiting for Arnie, but when he didn't show up, they moved forward with their plan. Dennis drove an excavator into the workshop while Lee hid inside the office, ready to trap Christine. However, they were unaware that Christine was already lurking in the shadows, hidden among the debris. Christine suddenly turned on her headlights and charged toward Lee, who narrowly escaped by grabbing onto a hanging tire. The car continued its relentless assault until Dennis intervened with the excavator, blocking Christine's path. Christine retreated momentarily, only to return, this time with Arnie at the wheel, fully under her influence. The car and the excavator faced off, and despite Dennis's efforts, Christine repaired herself instantly after every attack. Arnie, in his obsession, refused to let anything come between him and Christine. During one high-speed maneuver, Arnie crashed through the windshield, mortally injured by shards of glass. In his dying moments, he reached out to touch Christine one last time before succumbing to his wounds. Christine, now enraged, turned her fury on Lee, but Dennis used the excavator to crush the car, pinning her against a pillar. Christine, still trying to repair herself, made one final attempt to attack, but Dennis and Lee worked together to completely destroy her with the bulldozer, reducing her to a pile of twisted metal. The nightmare appeared to be over. The next day, Dennis and Lee met Detective Junkins at a junkyard, where Christine's remains had been taken. As they walked away, they noticed a small piece of Christine's metal twitching, suggesting that the evil car was still alive and might return someday. Who is your dream car? Let us know in the comments, and see you in the next video.